Hi. Well, hi everybody, and welcome to the SAP Press Book Club. And so today is a little different than usual, which I kind of think is neat. I was My company actually was asking me some questions about AWS. And I'm like, I'm SAP, AWS. What? That's like foreign language. So I asked SAP Press, I was like, let's do SAP on AWS. There's a book. And so it just came out. This is the book of the day, SAP on AWS. And I have the authors with me here. And this time they're not from SAP. They actually are from AWS, which is pretty cool. So again, I'm Kendall Tyler. I'm your host of the SAP Press Book Club. And I would like to introduce our three authors, and I'll let them go for it themselves. So why don't Ravi start?
My first name is easy to pronounce, Ravi. Last name is pronounced Kashyap. I've been doing SAP for my whole career. I started with SAP administration. I've been doing cloud for maybe a decade or so.
There you go. Who's next? Go ahead.
I'll go next. This is Rajendra Narikimelli. So it's a little tricky last name, so you can call me Raj.
Perfect.
And then I have 22 plus years of experience. As Ravi said, all my life is in SAP. My blood bleeds blue. So I'm an ex-SAP employee. So yep, I'm still vote for SAP big time.
Excellent.
All right. Rozal Singh, I live and breathe SAP. I've been doing this for close to 18 years now. Expertise being migrations, upgrades, SAP S/4HANA conversions, and I've been working in the cloud space for almost 8 years now, and looking forward to this session.
Perfect. Well, I kind of got all of y'all beat. Do you know that I've been in SAP for over 31 years?
Oh my goodness.
I know. I started when I was 12, and it's just I really started back in the R2 days, believe it or not. So I've seen quite a bit of change here.
Yeah.
So the whole everything that SAP has been doing has been changing. And so now we're looking at AWS and what is going on here. So the first thing, I thought this was hilarious. I'm going to bring this up because I told the guys I thought it was really funny. So first thing we want to tell you is they have a disclaimer in the book, which is hilarious. They represent their own thoughts, their own points of view, experience, and not that of their employers. So that means you're getting the real information here from the guys who really want you guys to know all about AWS. So let's talk about the target audience for this book. Who wants to try that?
Yeah, let me take that one. So this is for SAP Cloud architects, your technical teams, and even the way we wrote this thought process really was even for the non-SAP folks to digest that information easily, because we do get to hear that, yes, we're deploying SAP workloads on the cloud on AWS, but how do the infra teams relate to it? Can they really comprehend what SAP system is, right? And what it takes to move such a mission critical systems or migrate these systems to AWS. Hence, we wrote this book keeping in mind the IT infra teams, the SAP cloud architects, the enterprise architects, and all the technical teams out there. So there is something for everyone, even the
Yes.
C-level suite. For the first few chapters, they can easily comprehend as to what is the business value proposition of moving SAP workloads to AWS.
Totally get that, because literally I'm like, okay, I can get through this chapter, but then the middle chapter's a little technical here. So, if you're a basis guy, we always talk about there's AWS lingo and then there's SAP lingo, and then there's the whole cloud lingo. And so basis guys, they will totally understand this, you know, because you guys talk SAP, which I love within the book, which is cool. So, you know, let's talk about like, what are the various cloud deployments that AWS can handle? You know, there's obviously like, you know, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service.
Okay, yeah, talking about deployment
Yeah.
mechanism. So SaaS in IaaS is infrastructure as a service, PaaS is platform as a service, SaaS is software as a service. I want to explain that. SAP's deployment can be depending on the product and platform. So for example, if you're running S/4HANA, there's an on-prem version and there's a cloud version. So on-prem version runs as it says on-prem, and on cloud providers on IaaS setup. The cloud version runs on RISE. So RISE with SAP is the SAP's offering, wherein they handle the installation and the managed services. So cloud version is meant for that. But there's also the SaaS/PaaS version called SAP BTP, Business Technology Platform. The way you distinguish is the span of control you have. If you can access the OS level, you are doing IaaS. If you can access runtime, well, like Java runtime or something, you're doing PaaS, platform as a service. If you can access just the application, just the user interface, nothing else, then you're doing SaaS.
I like the fact that you guys put in here that what are cloud providers? I was like, this makes sense. It's like, all right, it's electricity that's delivered to your home. Okay, same idea here. You know, it's it's what serves, you know, access. How do you access things?
We also wanted to make sure we kept up with the evolution. It used to be, I don't know, there's private cloud now. Hosting used to be a thing, and I used to work for a hosting company. Then now it's called private cloud. People used to use hyperscalers a lot. So now it has kind of evolved into cloud provider. Cloud is a thing, and whoever is providing the thing or the service is cloud provider. Whether it's public cloud, private cloud, hyperscalers. So just to combine all the terminologies.
So let's talk about your funny little thing here. You know, if I say, hey, it's just like moving it to another data center. I mean, you know, is it really just moving it to another data center?
I've heard that a lot. You know, cloud is nothing but somebody else's data center.
Yeah. It's just hanging out somewhere else, you know. I think it's gotten to be a lot different than just hanging out somewhere else, don't you?
Completely true. Go ahead, Raj.
Yeah, exactly. That's where when most of the customers basically, as I said, right, like you can move your stuff into another data center. That is a very critical feature of cloud, but that eventually turns into a bug. Okay, so if you don't handle it well, it is exactly analogous to moving your house. You can move all your furniture into a new house, of course, perfectly fine, that you can have it in your new house. But if you don't care about the aesthetics, uses, and convenience in the new house, new modern house, eventually their usage is not optimal. That's the same thing in the cloud as well. Like if you say like, okay, you can move everything into there and then operate in the same way, you can actually do it. But then eventually you're not reaping the benefits of a cloud. That's where in the planning, usually this problem happens in this scenario, like during a planning, we have seen customers very hell-bent on talking about security, hell-bent on security. They're talking about cost. They take care of it very perfectly. We are very happy with that because these two are very important aspects of a cloud move. But they forget the three other aspects of a cloud that what it actually offers. It's like one is the elasticity of the infrastructure. Like you can only need provision what you need today. You don't have to provision for the worst day of the year, right?
Yeah.
So you can expand and shrink. That's what you don't bake into your operation model. And then and the second thing is basically reliability. The reliability patterns, because of the way global infrastructure is set up in cloud providers in AWS, is availability zones, multi-regions, and all of the stuff. You can have different reliability patterns where you cannot even think of in the on-premise world. So that also improves the whole operations. And then the third and the important thing is automation. you can automate stuff like this, which you cannot do it in the on-premise world. That's where if I say like you have to incorporate elasticity, reliability, and then automation into your operation model. That's where actually that changes the whole perspective about cloud.
Oh, I know. It's so funny. The other day, my husband's like, the internet's down. And I'm like, oh. And then I was like, Alexa. And it didn't work. And I was like, what's wrong with Alexa? And he's like, oh my God, are you serious? So it's like the same idea. You have to remember all of the different things attached to what's going on. It's a lot of planning for everything.
For my hosting data itself, what Raj said, when I used to work for hosting company, somebody asked for 100 gig of storage and it has to go through the whole approval process. It takes weeks. Versus now, you just click a button and it happens. When I started learning public cloud or cloud providers, I was surprised too, a little bit. Like, okay, if I click a button, it happens. If that was so easy, why didn't we get it in our data centers?
Yeah.
I know. I totally agree. I know. So
and all the examples that we just called out, analogy to the house, the data center world, right? And you will see that in the book as well. And that's the whole thought process, was the thought process that we have to give comparisons, right, as to what it looks like in the real world versus what it would look like in the cloud, of course, in the real world as well. So those analogies will help our readers tremendously in comprehending what SAP on AWS is all about.
So what, everybody talks about, there's others besides AWS, is there a reason why someone should pick one over the other? I mean,
depends on a lot about use cases and what you have already. But the way I look at it, this is if you're looking for a cloud provider, you should look for a couple of things. On a broader level, you should look for resiliency, the way data centers are designed, availability zones are designed. I should look for what application you are moving. Most of the applications work on most of the cloud providers these days, but the application design itself, whether it's certified or not. SAP is a good example. SAP needs to be certified for each cloud provider. So if there's a cloud provider that's not certified for SAP, so that's out.
Yeah.
To begin with. Then the way operation, not only, so once you move, like you're talking earlier, once you move to a cloud, how would you change that operating model? So you should look for what automation things exist or what operational excellence tools and services they provide. Not every cloud provider provides the same tools and services for.
Well, you told me that there was certain software that you guys, have versus other companies that that's yours. Don't you have certain tools that are just specific to AWS that, other providers don't have, that you have one up on them, or?
So SAP maintains services like there are tools such as Launch Wizard that lets you automate and provision SAP systems. There are tools for monitoring such as App Insights, CloudWatch App Insights that let you monitor your SAP instances. On the operation sides also, there are a lot of tools that let you automate the system copies, for example, or backup and restore. But at the very broad layer, if you're trying to choose a cloud provider, look into resiliency, look into how the overall data centers are designed, then go from there and think about application architecture and how would you handle HA and DR, how would you handle your operations is how I look at it.
Yeah, I was looking at you guys actually are running some pretty snazzy things in your, super duper tools that everything's running on.
Yeah, and the funny thing that I was reading a little bit more the other day, and Gen AI is everywhere these days, right? So the other day I was reading about it, and it talks about how do you train your Gen AI model and how do you inference from it. Once it's trained, you have to get the inference. And these two are two different chips. For training the model, there's a chip called Trainium. For inferencing from it, there's a chip called Inferentia. And that's one of the things that maybe you were talking about earlier on.
Yeah.
And that's something AWS has done.
That's pretty cool. So tell me about the big news with AWS and SAP. I mean, it's like, woohoo! And so tell me about what happened.
The Sapphire announcement. And I promise that this book was not coordinated with Sapphire because we don't control anything at SAP, but it's so happy coincidence that it released at the same time that Sapphire was happening. I think the big announcements were Amazon runs on Rise. It was talking about the announcement, talked about how Amazon Project Kuiper has chosen Rise for their own SAP systems. And a lot of Gen AI announcement like BTP, we're talking about SAP Business Technology Platform that has a Gen AI hub. From there, you can access Amazon generative AI models. Amazon Bedrock is the generative AI service that provides slew of models, not only from Amazon, but partners such as Anthropic or Mistral or A121 Labs. All of that is available through BTP now.
That's pretty cool. I saw that thing that you guys have like different tools like facial recognition for AI, and you can bake that in and all kinds of things. I mean,
Yes, I think.
There are a slew of means like plethora of options that you have for AI services. They're already pre-built and pre-baked, which you just have to call the API and then send your input and get the output kind of a stuff. So that's where we also talk about little Gen AI services I mean, it's like briefly, because why we briefly is like it was 1 year back that actually we penned that chapter. Unfortunately, that the what's next is one of the first chapters we wrote. So during the time Gen AI was evolving, and then we thought like, okay, even if you want to write a lot about stuff in the Gen AI, it's going to obsolete so quickly, right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
We thought like, okay, we'll only provide a common patterns that were evolving during that time. It's like 3 patterns. Like one is like which you already have a service completely pre-built, ready to use, just like Amazon Lookouts or maybe Textract or Transcribe or Translate or whatever. There are many services that you can send input and get the output. Second one is like you wanted to leverage a lot of foundation models outside there, like ChatGPT or maybe there are many Anthropic and all other foundation models. So you can use a Bedrock and then orchestrate the whole stuff. Just you don't have to do the heavy lift. You call them and just use it. That's another pattern. Third thing is like, yeah, you don't like any of it. Like the pre-built one or the one you wanted to, which is there in the industry currently. You can build it something from scratch. That's very cost intensive, very effort intensive. But yeah, AWS also provides that kind of, as Ravi mentioned, like Inferentia and Trainium and all other infrastructure to build it and host it from the
Well,
scratch.
that's where scale comes in. I mean,
that's what these 3 patterns we talked about, but still after 1 year, I haven't seen anything that pattern evolve beyond that. So still that holds, but let's see what is in store for Gen AI in future. But yeah.
I know. What could we do that would be like so like motion? I don't know. Yeah, I'm just trying to like, movies or something that's grabbing something. I don't know. We have to figure out what's the new thing that everybody wants, within AI that AWS can, scale to do that. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. So I think that's what customers need to think about is what do they want to do, right? From the beginning?
There's a business point of view, then there's a technical point of view. This morning, I was listening to a podcast, a webcast from SAP that was talking about BTP and how BTP's resilience works, and then it works on the cloud provider level also with different availability zones. So I think like from business point of view, what do users want? What do the business users want to solve the problem? They don't care about infrastructure. Why do they care which AZ BTP runs it, right? And from technical point of view, you want to make sure that the availability and business continuity and stuff is met. So depending on which kind of user you are, if you're a business user, you should just be able to access things that you want from technical point of view. If I had my way, I would containerize everything. So I don't know if the SAP is looking into it or not. If somebody from SAP is on, containerize S4HANA. So I click a button on BTP and it's there.
That would be all in migrating everything, just suck it all in. So now let's talk about let's say I am an ECC customer and I am going to Rise and I'm trying to figure out which way to go or what to do. What's the first thing that I need to look at?
What's like that? Right.
Think about it. Like if I'm a customer, I'm an ECC customer. Let's say I'm a manufacturing customer, and I'm using all SAP end to end. So got a big footprint here, and I'm going to Rise. And then I'm like, all of my stuff is it's in the basement on a big mainframe, and it's just like falling apart, but it's still running. So, and everybody's like talking about the cloud and going, so what would you guys recommend for a customer like that? What's my first steps? Do I just jump in all in, or do I do a little bit, or, how would you take it?
The first step, I would say, like, of course, they have to embrace S4HANA and sooner than later. That's the way to go. So embrace to S4HANA and then move to SAP Rise is so seamless if you do that, because other options are a little constrained if you're moving into an SAP Rise. But yeah, S4HANA, embrace S4HANA, and then build whatever secret sources or other additional applications. Maybe if there is any fitment in SAP BTP, then plan to move other surrounding assets into an SAP BTP. And then if there is nothing in SAP Rise, there are certain workloads, we call it adjacent workloads, which are any workloads which are not fitting into an SAP Rise for maybe third-party software or maybe any other software which is not fitting into an SAP Rise. Put it into an AWS native account, which is a native account, and then SAP Rise account can seamlessly integrate and communicate. There are network patterns which will allow them to communicate. So everything you can move to AWS, which is Rise will go to Rise, which is not Rise will go to your native account. And they work seamlessly as easy. But yeah, the operating model changes, of course, as I said, right? Like the whole heavy lift is done by SAP. So you need to work with SAP and to see what things changing and how to deal with in the future operation model. But yeah, so since heavy lift is going there, so it's going to be easy transition.
I'll add to that. Thanks, Raj.
Go ahead.
So look at Rise as Rise versus not Rise. Rise is a program. It's not a technology. So Rise, under that program, what comes in is what you need to look at. For example, SAP does the installation, maintenance, managed services. If you're already working with a partner that is managed services, how would that look like when you move to Rise? Versus cloud provider, or AWS in this case, is the technology provider, is enabling all of this. So at the program level, Rise is the program, technology is AWS is the technology, and now you have to evaluate how your organization works with technology, managed service provider, and within Rise program, which is a licensing construct. You have to buy licenses from SAP, buy licenses from Red Hat or SUSE. All of that changes. So it's kind of a lot more of an operating model that you need to understand what difference and how would you adopt if you were to go.
Don't you, like, even if you're a customer that has, like, what if I'm a retail customer and I need a lot of like during Christmas time, or during a holiday, and I'm selling a lot of product, but other times I'm not. So, I mean, are you there for me? I mean,
So if that's one of the aspects we talk about, elasticity, right? Like the retail customers, like there will be a prime days, there will be non-prime days. So you just have to scale exactly accordingly to that. That's where you need to reap the benefit of scalability. So you need to talk to SAP. SAP is nowadays is actually a lot of things evolved in SAP Rise. So there are tailored option. There are many options. I'm not the right person to talk about what is SAP is doing, but it's a lot of things evolved. So you can talk to SAP, bring in this conversation. I need this power of elasticity so that I'm safeguarded. So
even beyond elasticity, if you're looking for those N+1 landscapes to be stood up, right? This is where SAP can do that for you, even in the Rise construct. And just circling back on the whole, the starting point as to what should customer look at. Another thing to look at is just adding a bit more color to what Raj and Ravi already mentioned, is that evaluation of that hyperscaler in between the process of phase 0 and phase 1. Phase 0 is when you're doing that S4HANA evaluation, and it's mostly a business-driven conversion or a decision, whether it's brownfield, bluefield, or a greenfield implementation, right? But in that middle, there is that important decision criteria, which is the hyperscaler selection, the CSP, cloud service provider selection that the customer has to make. So I would highly recommend to all the customers, the clients that are moving to Rise, to evaluate that option, to do your due diligence as to what each hyperscaler offers, their feature set, so that you can make an educated decision. And it's simply not a default decision that, okay, X is my hyperscaler and we're going with that, right? So I think that's very important to keep in mind, because as Ravi was calling out, when we talk about selecting a hyperscaler, it's different criteria as resiliency, what features and tool sets they offer, right? So you should have a scoring criteria defined and then evaluate and select your hyperscaler.
And also, there's a lot of pricing and discounts going on. So make sure you get your hyperscaler that's going to give you a discount. I found that to be pretty cool. Even SAP, I mean, so I think that involves, like, working with SAP, working with your system integrator, working with, you guys, and figuring out what is the game plan. Otherwise, you can't get past zero.
Yeah, agree. And then TCO is thrown around a lot. TCO is total cost of operations. I'm blanking out now. Ownership, there you go.
Ownership.
So TCO is thrown around a lot. And we look at TCO from, especially for RISE, look at TCO from the whole perspective, because SAP licensing model is changing. Your managed services model is changing. Even OS licensing model is changing. You can't bring your own license anymore, SUSE or Red Hat or whichever else. And then the cloud provider services offering, like it's the same cloud provider offerings, but now you're buying from SAP instead of buying from cloud provider directly. So a lot of changes there, and how you do your TCO. I like Rozal's point about creating a scorecard. That's a really good idea. Create a scorecard based on how much you value this versus what's your organization values particular features.
Y'all need to give me that scorecard. I would love to. I'll evaluate you guys. So if I'm a customer, and do I just reach out directly to you, or does SAP help me manage that?
Depends on what we are talking about. If it's RISE is SAP's offering. So
No,
SAP takes the lead with cloud providers helping them. If it's like, let's say you're a customer that wants to go directly to a cloud provider. So I reach out to the cloud provider, figure out, let me steal Rozal's point, figure out how to build your scorecard. And evaluate the cloud provider based on the application that you're moving, the availability requirements you have. Look at the industry perspective too. Like a couple of years ago, Gartner's released a note that said for enterprise applications such as SAP, availability zone is the best way to do high availability. So look which cloud providers have availability zones everywhere. Look how industry is saying you should run your SAP, and what are the considerations out there.
I love the fact that I can say, like, okay, I have this application and I'm gonna, so I don't, RISE is just the ERP side, but if I have an HR thing going on, if I've got a CRM thing going on, we can put all of that on, with you guys, not just one piece of it. So I don't have to keep the mainframe in the basement.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the data center thing was coming. I'll let you speak, Rozal. When you're moving the data center, whole data center, you're kind of getting rid of it. And RISE can take some, not the others. And we got to figure out what goes where.
You're still going to have some basis guys in the basement hugging it. Oh, they love the hardware. Yeah. But they can go visit Jaws. I know that. They can go on tours and see where it is and see all your equipment. So
yeah, I think everybody offers the data center tours, right? Yeah, all the cloud providers offer in some form or other.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yeah.
Have y'all been on any of them?
I was gonna go, but during COVID times, like last year, I was trying to go. They didn't have any going on. I got to look now to see if they have one.
And if you guys, have y'all been on one?
No, I haven't been on one. Yeah, yet to do that.
Yeah, we have very stringent stuff to anybody to touch even to know where the data center is. But
that's other part.
My husband went on one.
There is some guided tour. Yeah,
like
there is.
Vegas area, out in the desert.
Oh, you went to that one? Okay. Okay. Part of this is kind of anonymity. If you drive by AWS data center, you wouldn't even know whether it's AWS data center. But So it's kind of anonymity. They'll never,
Yeah,
but
so-
there's no publicly available addresses and stuff.
So I've been driving through the in North Virginia and area that where it's the hell lot of data centers. Like they are all constructed in a different way, safe houses. Like where there are no windows and all of this stuff. There are big multi-story houses without.
Do you know who was up there? Is AOL.
Yeah, everybody has that.
They have the data centers there.
AOL started up in Northern Virginia, right where that is, and that's probably all the old AOL buildings.
Every cloud provider. It would be funny, like there would be an AWS data center next to Azure or maybe next to a SAP data center. That could be possible, but yeah.
Yeah, and then even the others one like REITs, Equinix may have data center, or Digital Realty may have data centers. And a lot of these cloud providers may be using this Equinix data centers.
I know, you would never think of any of that. All right, let's see. I'm gonna open this up to questions for you guys. So let's see if anybody is intrigued and wants to ask the guys some questions, other than me asking about crazy data centers and where they're at. Y'all need to do like a tour or something, and everybody can kind of go in. How can I find a partner to help us with setting up SAP on AWS? That's easy. Call me.
Hey, so I like that. Call Kendall and ask for the
Call
scorecard
Kendall.
on what do partners do and how do you
here's the score.
rate it.
Figure it out for you. Yeah, SAP could actually help you with that. And recommend some partners. That would be good for you. But you always can call me. And I can help you find the right.
AWS has a lot of competency. They call it competency partners, wherein partners can do AWS infrastructure. There are partners that can do SAP on AWS, and there are partners that can do application like SAP application or functional work too. So you can start with who you have relationship with.
Yeah.
If you don't have a relationship with anybody, talk to Kendall.
Talk to me.
If she doesn't respond to your emails or notes, go look at AWS competency partners and kind of figure out what you're trying to do. If you're trying to deploy SAP or migrate SAP, you need to look at which partners have this SAP competency, and the SAP certified partners versus infrastructure certified partners.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's always like you know, at every system integrator, it seems like AWS is like one side of the house, and then SAP's kind of been on the other side of the house, and bringing the two groups together, within just a system integrator is, kind of interesting because they always have different views of things, they're kind of like, hey, what? Very confusing. And I think now it's kind of jivey, but.
So I like to say they have an independent point of view or more informed point of view, right? I work for system integrators, so they have their own informed point of view. They're listening to everybody, trying to see what marketplace is saying and create their own point of view, which is nice to have.
Well, I think it's kind of like, I think the AWS guys are very intrigued with the SAP side coming in because they haven't really had that. I mean, it's like it is now compared to before. They have done that. But here's another question for you guys. You mentioned Gen AI earlier. Did you provide any guidance on this topic in your book?
So as I already answered, right? Like this was one of the chapters that we wrote very early in the book writing. Maybe that was not, in hindsight, maybe not was the right idea to do it, but we provided it. There is a high-level guidance, which very couple of pages, but otherwise it is worthy of a book by itself, and then it is going to be obsolete very quickly, as I said, right? So there are certain patterns we have written. That patterns are really a guidance in which directions you want to explore Gen AI. But I haven't seen any other pattern evolving from the last 1 year since I wrote the book. So still that is valid. Those 3 patterns.
Page 492.
Yes, yeah. I should have my book and then refer that. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I like the fact that you actually put it in an example like Amazon Comprehend, which is you analyze the customer reviews to understand and extract the key information from unstructured text data.
Yep.
And then you actually go down the list and say, like, what's the use case for it? What's the example of it? And then, So I like that you kind of put it in layman's terms, not just like crazy AI, analytical, you know.
Yeah.
Also,
And
GenAI has its own problems, but let me tell you a use case that I like. So, GenAI is very good at summarizing or reading documents and giving you the inputs or Q&A based kind of thing. So the way I started experimenting was there was a feature within one of the services where you could put all the public links. So
Yeah.
I put all the AWS and SAP documentation in those links, let it crawl through all of that, and I created a chat bot where you could ask the questions like, for example, what does Launch Wizard do, for example? And then it would give you the answer based on the documentation
like
that
that.
exists out there. So in theory, you could put this book or PDF of this book. You could throw this PDF of the book at a Gen AI and ask questions based on that if you don't want to read the whole thing.
yeah,
I know.
and just to add a bit more color to what Raj said, right? This is an ever evolving world, right? Specifically the cloud and the services and the feature set that are being offered every month, if not weeks, we getting new features and updates. And while writing the book, we sometimes had to go back and update the chapters because a certain feature was released. And now we've done our best to just call it out that at the time of writing this book, that this is what is supported or XYZ, like whatever the statement is. Another thing I would recommend our listeners and our readers as well is go check out AWS's events and webinars. And we are so AWS does host a lot of Gen AI and SAP related use cases via events or webinars. So try to attend those where you can get the latest and the greatest information on the use cases, what services we leverage. And this could be another extension to your book, right? So once you read the book, now you can start to correlate as to what the use
You're gonna have
cases
to
could
be
be,
your
right?
book number 2 for that.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right.
Maybe
It's
probably
already
we're
there.
writing
Yeah.
it. No, we don't
Yeah.
really write.
It's gonna be SAP on steroids. And y'all can write that
Yeah,
with
yeah.
AWS.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question. So for an SAP functional consultant, how much technical details should they know about SAP on AWS? I'm going to say 0, but I'm just kidding. Just a
No,
little. I mean,
maybe I'll take this question.
okay.
As I said, right, like the whole operation model is changing. So most of the manual activity is going into an automation, right? So automation is driven by scripts. So the developers has to wear a different hat of automating the operations. And then at the same time, modernization has actually removed the entries of barriers, where previously you have to buy a big component off the shelf and you have to start knowing a lot of skill around it. But now you just have to dip your toes and then get your extension built in a with very short duration. So you need to have the developers mentality to integrate the stuff with BTP, integrate the stuff with AWS native services. So I say, like, it's a change of perception. Actually, if you ask me, the mindset of the developers should have been there in everybody's. Even a technical architect should have that builder's mentality, we call it. That's where when we're writing a book, we wanted to transform an SAP architect into an SAP cloud architect, meaning that
Yes.
you have to build this builder mentality into it. So the importance of developers is increasing, not anywhere, nowhere closer to decreasing it. So that's what
But what about a functional
Thanks.
consultant?
Functional is definitely, they have to put in that aspect, right? Like what we are building in. So now low code thing came into picture, right? It is where we are going into in the modernization
that's
aspect.
true.
So functional consultant itself would be modeling it in the modeling tool, and the things are happening. So that what you call Signavio, whatever that we have.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm like Signavio'd out.
So model it, and then you will have it.
Yeah.
I think at some base level of knowledge is important for everybody.
Yeah, at least get to know what is working behind the scenes. And if you really want to, I shouldn't say it, but okay, let me say it. If you really want to avoid reading the rest of the 9 chapters, then focus on just chapter number 10, which talks of transformation in the book.
Yes,
That is
I
where
saw that.
that is where SAP functional teams will have a lot of input for the technical team, specifically for the developers, as to how the business processes work and where we can improve it and how we can modernize it, leveraging AWS services, right? So chapter 10 will be your best friend going forward for all the SAP functional folks out there.
I like your diagrams that y'all been doing in here about how things work. There was one in here, was actually kind of, I always like just tell it to me simple. I don't want some kind of like crazy thing. But what is, literally like managed services, SAP license, cloud services. Okay, what's the difference? You broke it down very simple into what it is, and now, oh, I get it. But I don't think that functional guys need to know. Let the technical guys handle it. Just tell them to keep it running. And what's the speed number to call if it breaks down?
But I would say ask your technical people about more services. Like Rozal was saying, if you're trying to use a particular service, me as a technical guy can explain how the service works, but I can't tell you the use case or what you're trying to do, like functionality. Let's say manufacturing, you're running a manufacturing shop. You know better than me how manufacturing works. Right. So I can tell you about this service or monitor on service, for example, but you can tell me, or you can from there you can figure out how does Monitron work in manufacturing, for example, or how does digital twin work in manufacturing, for example.
Or there was something about it's so complicated on, that was my last guy I talked to. It was so interesting. If you have the pricing, and the pricing is so confusing because it's so complicated to figure out how much something costs, that you can actually take that piece and put it separately. And I was like, what? Yeah. And so that's something that could be running on AWS outside of Rise to be putting, so there's like little things like that. So that if you're a functional person, you would say, hey, by the way,
your tax system, like a lot of SAP systems connect to tax system. If you're buying something, it calculates the taxes based on where you live. So, that's a functionality of a tax system, and then where it runs. Know something.
Oh, I know. Okay, here's another one. What's the most important piece of information you learned while writing the book? Or did you already know everything related to AWS on SAP?
Nobody knows everything. And I guess this question we could all answer in our own ways. I'll start. The most important thing, not most important per se, but I learned a lot about stuff that is not directly related to SAP. For example, if I were to categorize SAP, I would say storage, network, and virtual machine or EC2 instance are the most important things. But I learned a lot about how cost works, or how a different kind of, you're talking about different kind of discounting mechanism works. For example, EC2 savings plan or compute savings plan. A lot of things that you wouldn't usually think about when you're thinking about SAP was my learning.
Who about you guys?
But let Raj and Rozal answer there.
So for me, it's actually, it ended up like I wrote this book for myself. So I've learned a lot. I've researched a lot. Writing a book is really challenging. You felt like you know everything, but when you start writing it, there are many gaps in that particular knowledge. You find like, oh, how to connect this? I just have to go through, because I don't want to give a wrong impression of just abstracting that information. So I had to do a lot of research, and some stuff we used to make a single sentence. That bothers a lot. No. How does it work? And I have to set up that environment in my own tests and see like, yeah, this works this way. So this is not that way. And then even documentation gets obsolete. And then I feel like, no. It doesn't look the same way it's mentioned in the documentation. So it's a lot of stuff. There's a famous saying, say like, if you steal from one, it's called plagiarism. If you steal from many, it's called research. So that's happened. There are many people have actually contributed to this indirectly. There are many blogs, SAP blogs, this blogs and that blog. If anybody claims that, hey, this is something that I wrote, maybe yours. But that's
the idea can be used again.
Yeah.
And that one was like, that's how all this started, isn't it? with the coding and everything?
The whole concept of cloud providers, you mean?
Yeah.
General. Okay, let's hear. What did you learn?
Yeah, so I still remember chapter 4, AWS landing zone, and I thought I pretty much know everything. I can write about it, right? And big deal. I have to write 50 pages on it, so let's go for it. And here I am sitting on page 3. I'm like, what's next? I mean, what do I write? What else do I write? And then I had to do all my research, went through the documentation, implemented AWS landing zone in my lab, experimented with it, learned about all the capabilities and the features and what it cannot or it could do. And here I am with those 50 plus pages on AWS landing zone. So it was a huge or a steep learning curve for me. And that's with the AWS side of the things. Even on the SAP side, you just stick with, let's say we doing a migration of an SAP system. We know we call out 4 or 5 strategies or approaches that you can take to migrate an SAP system to AWS. But then you really deep dive and see, is there an option 5 there? Is there another option that is a valid approach? And then I eventually found out, yes, there are 2 more approaches which are valid, which we usually don't call out, but they are sometimes in play for whatever reasons, right? So hence you end up with 6 options now instead of 4 because you did your research. So to summarize, yes, it's been an awesome experience, huge, steep learning curve, learned a lot. For everyone who is considering to write a book, writer's block is not a myth. It's a fact. It does happen. I've been in that situation now. I know about it. I was stuck on a page for a week. I did not know what to do about it. I reached out to
ChatGPT now. That's
yeah, I reached
writer's
out to
block.
these guys. Yeah, help me out here, and Ravi
100%.
graciously, yeah, helped me out. So it was a collaborative effort, and here we are.
Is
Uh,
there a certain
big-
industry? Did you all ever find that there's an industry that's more difficult than others? Or all, is everybody pretty much the same?
So industry, in a sense, like that's a specific industry segment.
Yeah, like it's
like
utility versus discrete manufacturing versus retail versus, I mean, is there an industry that's like just so complicated versus another industry?
Every industry we've dealt with have its own challenges. Like HCLS is so far by far it's been a more innovative organization. They wanted to be catching up the what do you call modernization curve. They have to quickly do it, and then they throw a lot of challenges to us. So compliance requirements they have, retail as a performance requirements they do have. So oil and gas has a different challenges. So
Yeah.
every industry has a different challenges. I won't say like this is lesser, this is more. That's depending on the day that we are facing the customer. So
I also think that certain industry has more adoption of SAP. Like,
Mhm.
for example, in financial services, people use central finance, for example, versus manufacturing. A lot of manufacturing companies use SAP to a larger extent than a financial company would use. Different regulations. Financial companies have a lot more regulations than some of the other ones. Different documentation requirements, like you're talking about healthcare, they have GXP, for example. That's a lot more document intensive than a manufacturing company, where it doesn't like those kind of trials and data privacy.
Have y'all
regulations
done
don't get-
anything with like public sector and any of that?
I- Kendall, you read my mind. I mean, I was gonna say public sector or federal agencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we get into those, yes, those become pretty complex pretty quickly because of the stringent security and
Oh my
regulatory
gosh.
compliance
I went to
requirements.
the SAP regulated group meeting and I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And
Well,
I'm sure you guys are hit up with that.
it's so much big deal that there's a different regions, like gov cloud regions are totally different for commercial cloud regions. For
Yeah.
all cloud providers, they don't even are near each other, or I don't even know where the gov cloud regions are and address and stuff. So totally
They were
different.
like,
They don't intersect. There's no connection between gov cloud regions
yeah,
and
it's like really
commercial cloud
odd.
regions.
Yep.
Yeah. Whew. That's a whole nother story there, Rozal. Oh.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay, here's another question for you guys. How easy is it to move an SAP system over to AWS.
As easy as automation can make it. We
That's
need to
what
consider.
As long as you're not
I'll-
doing it.
I'll
You're
start and
not.
I'll let Raj add it. You need to consider
Yeah,
where you are. Are you on
Ravi,
ECC?
Ravi, quickly refer to chapter 6 in the book.
Oh, there you go. I like that. Chapter number 6 holds all the answers.
It does. I'll have to read
Ravi,
it.
over to you. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
The way I look at it is where you are and where you want to go. If you're on ECC versus you're on R3, and I've heard of companies still running R3.
They are. I know them. I was like, oh yeah, they've still got R3 and then all of these old ECC versions,
Yeah.
multiple, more like 10, 15 plus landscapes of SAP, all different
Exactly.
versions. They
So
buy
that's
a
where
company, they get something else.
Yeah, true. They buy a company, they get something on a different cloud provider that you are on. To answer the direct question, I think it depends on how easy or difficult it is, where you are which version of SAP you are on. Even if you're on ECC or a particular version, look at what kernel level you are on and what support pack you are on. So how easy or difficult it is to migrate? If under certain conditions, under right conditions, it's really easy to migrate. If you're doing lift or shift, you're doing from ECC to HANA, if you're on the right
Nobody
support pack,
likes
right
that.
level, it's really
We're
easy.
going to Signavio. We're going to do a business transformation.
Yeah, exactly.
Greenfield.
But if you're going from
There's old
ECC to
stuff.
S/4HANA, and to Kendall's point, you're trying to see what your business process look like and whether S/4HANA does that a lot out of the box. So let's say you have a lot of custom programs for your business process in ECC. S/4HANA does that out of the box.
Yeah.
And use Signavio to figure out which ones are already out of the box.
Yep.
And that kind of migration gets really involved. That's one use case where it's very, very intensive. The other one would be you have a lot of ECC data. You don't want all of data in there now. It's already sold 50 different companies. You have a very small company now. Do you really want all of that data now? So you have to do selective data migration.
Need to archive.
Yeah, do archive and do a selective data migration to S/4HANA. So
don't drag it all with you.
Yep.
In that case, it would get a lot more involved. So I would say the right way to look at this is what kind of technology/tools you can use to make that easier. So if you're doing a selective data migration, see what tools exist. If you're doing business process reimagination of business process, and see what tools and technologies and Signavio exist. If you're trying to do lift and shift, to see what kind of tools are provided by cloud providers. If you're going RISE, ask SAP about what kind of tools they are using to not only migrate, but to manage the operations, what kind of monitoring tools they have, what kind of SLAs you have. All those questions need to be kind of addressed in the context of what landscape you have, what systems you have, and how you're envisioning your future.
Let me ask you a question. So if I have multiple SAP systems, okay, and I want to eventually get them all into one, and they're all being like, I'm dealing with it. They're all mine. They're hosted. I'm dealing with them all. They're all old. So I want to do one, but then should I actually put the rest of them on AWS before, and then would it be easier to migrate the rest of them in?
Definitely, I would say bring in, if you're doing a bigger transformation, first thing, you have to deal with a lot of infrastructure, a lot of moving parts. So to bring into a cloud brings that kind of an on-demand scenarios where you don't have to pre-plan for a capital expenditure, how much infrastructure I need to have. So bringing there gives you flexibility, set up N+1s, N+2s, or you set up regional systems and shut them down based on your costing and all of this stuff. So that infrastructure flexibility that brings in that, bringing into an AWS, I would say do that fast and then do the bigger shift. But that's all depending on business requirements and timing, right? Like what do you want to achieve? Or by what time? But yeah, for me,
Kendall, few customers have taken that, or clients have taken that approach, because the cost savings that you get by moving onto the cloud first, you invest those cloud savings into that consolidation S/4HANA project. Right. Yeah. So that's another way to look at it. So that's the typical path that we're seeing. But
I've seen people moving archive system. To your point, if you have 10 different ECC systems and you're using only 2 of those, 7 are just costing you money. move it
Yeah.
to the cloud, shut it down. Data still exists, but you're not paying for it anymore, or you're paying for significantly less just for the storage piece of it. So I've seen a lot of companies do that too.
Really interesting. Wow. So here's our last question. Is there a trial system to use to kick the tires?
For SAP or AWS?
AWS.
Yeah.
AWS does not provide any SAP trial systems, mainly because of licensing, right? AWS, SAP provides the SAP license. So AWS or any cloud provider cannot provide you an SAP license. But if you have access to cloud provider's account, you can use SAP CAL. CAL is the cloud appliance library. So you connect your cloud provider account to CAL, SAP CAL, and from SAP CAL, you can provision the systems that you don't have to. So the CAL is such a streamlined process where you don't have to worry about downloading the software or anything. You go select S4HANA systems, connect that to your cloud provider, click deploy, and a couple of hours later, you have an SAP system that comes with, I think, 90-day license now.
Really?
So that's the way to do a trial system, SAP trial system on a cloud provider.
I did not know that. I just thought you could like buy something online and it would be delivered, and that would be how I.
Yeah, you have Outpost. You can send it to you. It's a big software box, but unfortunately, you cannot run SAP on it. But yeah, you can run. You can host your photos.
At least the POC can be run. At least the trial system can be run.
Yeah. So Cal, if you have other people have not heard of it, Cal is cal.sap.com. Go there, click. In it's an SAP user ID because you're using SAP trial, of course. So.
Wow, pretty cool. All right. Well, anywho, I wanted to tell everybody that you can get 15% off on your book. Did y'all know that?
Yeah,
So,
isn't that good?
I know. Go to SAP Press and look up their book, and you can get 15% off by using a coupon code Book Club 15. And that way they can get 15% off. And our goal is to get you all the top 10.
Thanks,
Top
Kendall.
10 list. We're going to get you there. So
Thank you, everybody, for their questions. Happy learning. And also, feel free to reach out to us. Like all of us are on LinkedIn. And if you reach out to us for a specific question or something, we are happy to answer that.
Yep.
We will answer
absolutely.
any question or get you to the right person if you all have any questions. So, and also join our book club on LinkedIn as well. And you can see all kinds of things. And so I just want to thank you guys for coming. This is wonderful. And thank you, SAP Press, for having all of us here. And what is our next big event? Do y'all have a big event at the end of this year? Y'all know anything going on?
AWS reInvent is the biggest event that AWS hosts. And I think it's in October.
SAP TechEd is there, you know, your
SAP TechEd, yeah, from SAP event TechEd is TechEd.
That's online now, isn't it?
Yeah, TechEd is online now. And ASAC has an event, ASAC Tech Connect.
I saw that, Tech Connect.
Yeah, they're hosting it in Florida. How cool is that?
That is cool.
Like,
and it's
West Palm
in
Beach
Miami
or something.
Or something?
Yeah, somewhere near Fort Lauderdale, Miami, somewhere in that region.
It's like, whoa, not Orlando. What? All right.
Yeah, I'm going to Tech Connect, right? And you're sitting at the beach.
I'll try to go and hang out with you. But anyway, thank you again. Thank you, SAP Press. And thank you guys. And thank you, AWS.
Thank you,
thank you, Kendall. And thank you, Cognizant. And that's who I work for.
Thank you.
So, all right. Well, thanks, guys. And cheers. And we'll see you next time.
Happy
Bye.
learning.
Thanks all. Thanks for having us.